So before we begin this delightful conversation, I want to make a plug for all of you leaders out there who are very likely struggling with overwhelm in your life. We have so many ambitions and responsibilities in our roles as leaders, but we often fail to be able to even address the most important work that needs to be done just due to the sheer volume or the mismanagement of it. So it's for this reason that I've decided to give away for free the entire self-management module of the Clearing Obstacles Roadmap. Now, the full roadmap itself is the comprehensive set of tools that I use with all of my clients to help them in our coaching journey, but it always starts every time with the self-work or self-management specifically. I'm deeply committed to helping you get traction in your life so you can crush those frustrations of overwhelm that are holding you back from the success that you're living for. All 11 lessons stand on their own, but together they delve into solutions that extend far beyond mere productivity tools. So go to bestself.coach/free to get started today. I want you to have your own self-management operating system to help you clear the obstacles that are in your way. Can't wait to see you there. I want to preempt what these 5 lies are, because, and maybe you'll address this with those. How could you have sabotaged that effort when she picks up the phone? Like, what could you have done that would have not made it turn out to be successful as it was?
Yeah, I think my nervousness that made me write out the opening was really important. I didn't realize this till years later, but I wrote and rewrote that probably 6 or 7 times because I thought it was such an awful idea. As I made it through the iterations to make that opening decent, hopefully it was decent, it worked. I went from, in the beginning, worried about me to, in the end, the value for her.
Welcome to Season 2 of Clearing Obstacles, the podcast for leaders and those that want to be, because no organization, not even yours, can thrive without effective leadership. Now, as you master this skill, it will become the superpower that gains the love and respect of your team, the freedom you seek in your life and business, and ultimately, the success of your vision. I'm your host and coach, Dan Kent, with Best Self Coaching, and in Season 2, we're bringing you the voices of thought leaders who have a unique and valuable perspective to share on how to reimagine and redefine leadership in our world today. We'll be diving into topics of vision and authority and accountability, management, culture, vulnerability, self-awareness, and much more, because they all fall on the shoulders of today's leaders. Are you one of those exceptional people? Well, you can be. Our guests all have extensive theoretical and philosophical depth that's also matched by their experience in the practical application of those principles. And we think you're going to agree. So, all of you emerging and evolving leaders, buckle up as we clear the obstacles to help you get there from here. So I had this client recently who was devoted to the idea of systematizing his business. He was all bought in on creating a playbook for his business that would allow him to have an enterprise that would provide him with options, whether he could step away from it so it wouldn't require as much of his time, or he could sell it or franchise it. He just wanted options. But above all, he really wanted to improve the quality of everything they did. We were speaking the same language on this topic, as it's a large part of what many of my clients find success with in our coaching experience. But as this client, we'll call him Mike, began to make progress on these structures and systems and metrics, well, by the time he got started and got some momentum, we began to see this overly mechanical set of operations and steps that was frankly devoid of any heart or humanity. I mean, sure, he had academically reverse engineered many of the operations that his team performed, but nobody wanted to use the systems. And so the results felt so automatronic that I'm sure a team of robots may have thrived, but his people would not. All right, so why am I telling you about Mike when he's not even our guest today? Well, the man we will be talking to is sort of the anti-Mike. Mo Bunnell comes from a background as an actuary where data is king, but he has taken his love of data and analytics and brought it all forward into a remarkable methodology for business development that focuses on relationships and the things that connect us through our shared humanity. He's written a terrific book called The Snowball System, and has another book that I can barely wait for called Give to Grow that comes out on August 27th of 24 this year. Mo's authentic heart and generosity are at the core of his success. Make a note to check out his prolific content. You'll see and feel what I'm talking about. He is a wizard at helping others through the same philosophy of business development. And today, we're going to hear more about that, as well as how many of those same principles can create meteoric strides in leadership and team development as well. He's the leader of the Bunnell Idea Group. He has his own podcast called Real Relationships, Real Revenue, as well as a terrific newsletter that I highly recommend. It's one of maybe a handful that I even subscribe to, called The Grow Big Playbook. And with that, it's my great pleasure to welcome from the Bunnell Idea Group, Mo Bunnell, to the Clearing Obstacles podcast. Mo, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Man, I've got to really deliver after that opening.
We're setting the bar high, brother.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
I have no doubt you are, man. You're always seem so keenly prepared on everything that you deliver, not just the content in its value, but you're so succinct. You're able to distill the messages and the deliverables down to like really succinct, clear, concise stuff.
Well, thanks, Dan. I'll tell you, I try really hard at that. One of the things I do, and I know this isn't where you're going to go, but I'll just blurt it out, is I actually keep a little note of turns of phrase.
Yeah.
So when I'm in a meeting and I hear somebody say something, I'm like, the best time to sell is when you're sold out, or a great deal might make your year, but a great relationship can make your career.
Right.
Like, I might have come up with the second one, but I didn't come up with the first one. And like, I keep this database of these. And then when I add a new one, I happen to see the old ones. And it makes me come up with these little sayings that people really like and remember. And then I just try to shut up after that.
You've said the piece. They got the message. No need to expound and drone on with it. Yeah. That's great. The turn of phrase thing is really, we're already going off on a tangent here. A couple episodes prior to yours, we spoke with Neil Ford from Storyfire, an amazing storyteller. And he, in his course, Storyfire, he talks about that, keeping a notebook of colorful language, of stories that you recall, of the essential takeaways that people need. And I've begun to use that. See mine right here, keeping the same thing, and it proves invaluable, especially when, you've got a lot to deliver. I mean, your discipline has so many facets and so much nuance to it, but there are some real core fundamentals that you can get to. Maybe you could, I'm really looking forward to hearing what some of those are. Before we do that, if you don't mind, for the sake of having a concise introduction, I probably left a few things out. Could you take a couple minutes, maybe tell us a little bit about where you're at right now, what you're doing, and how you got here, Mo?
Yeah. Well, I will keep it brief. The super brief version, I won't go full on story mode because I think I want to get to content that'll be helpful to your audience. You already introduced me so well, but I will say this, that I think origin stories are important. And when you mentioned I was an actuary, at the time I took those, I had to take 24 different exams. It took almost a decade at the time. These young whippersnappers now, they just take 7 and they have a practicum and they're done. I mean, it's easy now. But there was this one moment in time where it's a long story. But anyway, it was really hard. And they made it harder without trying to, it sort of accidentally, and then they made it easier because nobody was getting through. And so anyway, the month I passed that last exam, after about a decade of passing these 24, pass rate of about 1/3, 2/3 of the people are failing. Tremendous effort it takes to get through these darn things. The firm I was with moved me to a relationship management role. And I think they had a reasonable time frame me to learn those skills, but everybody around me was 10, 20, 30 years older than me. And I'd gone from this world of where I was just billing time, having, delivering great work that actuaries do and healthcare consultants do, and, judged on client satisfaction, being a great colleague, things like that. Well, in that weekend, I moved to this new role. I shifted all my projects to the other folks in that stayed in that group. And I went in this new group, and now I'm being judged on how much are people buying from us. Mm-hmm. It was a huge consulting firm. Now there were literally hundreds of offerings I didn't know a thing about. And I'm dealing with people that are 30 years older than me, C-level people that I'm a young 30-year-old whippersnapper. And I felt tremendous pressure to learn that all right away. Yeah. And the only move I knew was studying. That's what I was really good at. Every 6 months, I took a new batch of exams and I hopefully passed them.
That was Mo's
And
Maslow's hammer.
yeah, that's all I had. So I had that. I'd been doing that for almost a decade. So I had this feeling that in 6 months I should learn this stuff for some reason, as opposed to 6 years, which is probably more reasonable. And even that would have been accelerated. And so I just started studying, taking notes, and I really struck gold when I got to peer-reviewed research. Why does somebody buy from one person, not another? How are great relationships formed? How do we hack our own habits to stay focused on the high value, high growth things for us and our clients and our colleagues, not just the ding of the email and the short-term things. And so anyway, through all that, the system started to work, and I started to just being asked to teach it to others. And then about gosh, it's almost 20 years ago, I got up the guts to leave that firm and start Bunnell Idea Group. And now we've trained like 50,000 people at hundreds of clients.
Wow. 50,000, you figure, I think before we started, you said that's probably 500 to 600 different clients. And of course that scales out to the people that they go and they train and the employees and clients they affect. This is that ripple effect of leadership that is so near and dear to my heart, and why the focus of season 2 is specifically on that. Fascinating the way you transitioned from strictly analytics to relationship building. Can you give a maybe top 2 or 3 influences that really stick out to you as formative in helping you build those skills?
Yeah. I'll tell you a story. There was one time early on in that process where I was linked to a mentor who was fantastic, and he really pushed me. I mean, he would give me to-dos in the morning and check in at night if I did them. So there was like no delay. I couldn't just kick the can down the road. And the way we structured it, which was really smart looking back, was instead of me having 2 huge clients and him having 2 huge clients, we co-led 4.
Okay.
So we truly were just in lockstep all the time. And, I sort of was carrying his bags to help him, but to also, I gained by learning from it. And we had worked really hard to what ended up being the largest. We designed this incredible total rewards study for a big client. We were in HR consulting. And I believe, if I remember right, it was the largest project we sold that year in our office, which was basically the whole Southeast for the US. And the client was excited, and it was highly competitive, and we won. It's this huge deal. Everybody's real excited about it. All the practice areas are involved because it's total rewards, air quotes around that. So it literally involved sort of everybody. Very rare to win those kind of things, especially at this big of an organization. And the day after we won it, my mentor walked in the room. I had like this huge round table. I had all the Gantt charts and project plans and all the data requests, all the stuff that we needed spread out all over the table. He walks in. I got in early that day because I was completely overwhelmed about how we were going to hit our first week's deadlines, excited, overwhelmed. And he just enters the doorway, cup of coffee, and says, "I got an idea." And I knew this was trouble. He said, we should have scoped this differently. And we should have actually added on 4 other things that the client really needs, but I didn't think about them till last night. So I want you, for each of these 4 areas, and he mapped them out on a whiteboard. I want you to go to the practice leader for each of these 4 areas, ask what they could do for X dollars, and he chose a relatively small X, and then call the CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officers at our client, and tell her, "Hey, great news. We thought of 4 more things." This is how I hear it. Uh-huh. "We thought of 4 more things you should buy from us." That's, the way I heard it was, "We're being crazy right now because you didn't ask for this." and then, he tells me to do that, and he says, "I'll check in with you at the end of the day." And Dan, I just thought this was an absolutely horrible idea. I felt like I was selling.
We got the win. What are we doing?
Of the word. Yeah, we're going to make her angry. I mean, this is a horrible idea. We're also like admitting we should have thought of this before. Like a whole bunch of negative tapes are running in my mind. Call all the practice leaders up. And unfortunately, every one of them was excited and quickly told me what they would do. So I had no one to blame. So that was done by like lunch because they were so excited to be attached to this huge project. So they were, whatever X was, we gave gave them, they were doing like 2x of the work for X to get in the door.
Yeah.
They were really excited to invest in this client. So like lunch comes around and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to call her. It's going to be awful. She's going to yell at me. And it took me a couple hours of like delaying by checking email and things that I finally got up the guts to call. Phone rings. I get her assistant. She loves me because we'd built this relationship. So I said, hey, wonder when could I talk with so-and-so? And I didn't even get it out of like, no big deal if she's not there. I was trying to not have the call.
Yeah.
And the assistant hears like half of it. And she's like, Mo, yeah, no problem. Let me pull her out of the meeting she's in. And I hear, this is the old landline phone days. So I hear the phone hit the table. I hear the clunk.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
was that the phone or my heart?
Yeah. And so my heart starts racing. Couple minutes go by. I'm sitting there waiting. I hear the phone brush up against the table. I hear a breath and I hear, hey, Mo, it's so-and-so. What do you need? I was so nervous about this. I had scripted out what I was going to say and written it out on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Like I at that moment, I felt like a telemarketer or something. I just felt, but I actually just read what was on the paper in front of me. I was so nervous. And she said, well, tell me what the 4 ideas are. But it was almost like intrigue, but also
a little skepticism.
Anger a little, like, why are you bugging me?
Mm-hmm.
And I read the first one, Dan, she loved it. I read the second one, she loved it. The third one, she said, we were just talking about that in the meeting we were in. We're afraid we're behind our competitors. Would that benchmarking tell us if we're behind? I'm like, yeah, it would. I'm almost in complete disbelief. She loved all 4 ideas. And even better yet, 3 of the 4 a year later turned into huge things. One of them was the largest global total rewards project we had ever done.
Oh my gosh.
At the organization, ever. So it was basically the largest global project we'd ever done. She was on the cover of our company's magazine.
Wow.
A year and a half later because this work was so cutting edge. It never would have happened if the small project wouldn't have bought, if it never would have happened if my mentor wouldn't have whacked me over the head and said, do this.
Yeah.
And I think that was the longest story of all time, Dan. But I think my point is,
I loved it.
For the audience is, if we want to be change agents, if we want to drive positive change, we have got to get the lies out of our head, out of there that hold us back. And that's a whole section of the next book, Give to Grow, we did a ton of research. We found the 5 lies that are in our head that get in our way as leaders. Mm-hmm. And it is massively interesting to know what one of those are.
Come on. You're going to make them wait until August now for this?
No, we're going to cover it. We'll cover it.
Okay, cool.
But I was succumbing. I was falling for one of the 5 lies.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm dying to hear what they are. Okay. I want to preempt what these 5 lies are, and maybe you'll address this with those. How could you have sabotaged that effort when she picks up the phone? Like, what could you have done that would have not made it turn out to be successful as it was?
Yeah, I think my nervousness that made me write out the opening was really important. I didn't realize this till years later, but I wrote and rewrote that probably 6 or 7 times because I thought it was such an awful idea. As I made it through the iterations to make that opening decent, hopefully it was decent, it worked. I went from, in the beginning, worried about me to, in the end, the value for her.
That. Mm-hmm.
So I don't even remember it totally now, but it was something along the lines of, hey, so-and-so, I'm calling because we thought of some things last night as we were really excited about this great work we're going to do together. So that like it has a positive opening. And I wish, honestly, I actually fell on the sword a little bit because it was true.
Yeah.
I wished we would have thought of these before, but we didn't. But the end result is actually going to be really great news for you. These were 4 areas that we thought would be really helpful to dig into a little bit. And each of the 4 are optional. You can say yes or no to any of them. And I went to our senior most people in the firm to see what they would do for X dollars. And I asked them to be a part of this if they'd be willing to pack more value in that normal dollar amount, because we could have one data request. We can have one readout meeting. We can all do this together. We can leverage the work we're already doing. So we think we can give you about 2X of the value for any of these, because if we do them now.
Right.
And again, you can say yes or no to anything. So that was roughly the opening, was benefit to her, benefit to her, benefit to her.
That's what I was looking for.
And then when I described each of those, they really were compelling.
Yeah.
Like they were almost to no-brainer levels.
Yeah.
And now I look back and it was really great and it was obvious and we should have done it. But man, in that moment, I just thought I didn't understand that yet.
Yeah. I can almost prophesize one of those lies being about something having to do with feeling salesy. Like you felt like you were going to be opportunistic.
That is one of them.
You're not helper. You were going to be opportunistic in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to tie back to your question, which is so good, is the meta thread that's sort of in all that is one of the most important things we need to do as leaders, if we're going to drive positive change, is always frame things as the benefit to everybody else. Every single question, every recommendation, every idea, we've got to get outside of our own body and head and think, how does this benefit everybody else? And if we're always doing that, we're choosing the right things, we're framing them in the right way, and we're going to get agreement faster to make the big positive changes in the world.
Yeah. Maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here with this question, but how common is it in your experience that you see that effort being executed kind of disingenuously? How can I position this so that it sounds helpful, even though, like I said, it is opportunistic?
Yeah. Well, a lot. And I think it's interesting what, our core program that we do more than any other is called Grow Big Training. And it teaches every single skill that someone needs to be great at growth. That's the idea. 17 modules, 3 days of training, usually coupled with spread out over time with coaching. I mean, it's truly transformative. And it's interesting, Dan, because I don't think we really have competition in that space.
Yeah.
Like it's a blue ocean. Every single thing that we teach, and we say this over and over in the class, is every move is beneficial to all. One of the one-liners and that I fell in love with, that I have in my little database, it's in the book Give to Grow, is it's always your move and it's always a chance to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think of that as like relationship skills, or it's sort of business development, commercial skills training in a way, but one that's relationship focused, it's everybody else's, it's otherish focus. All of our competitors are sales training, air quotes around that. And that's sort of a red ocean. It's like there's a million people do it. It's great. I'm sure it's helpful, but it's either explicit or implied that it's manipulation.
Yeah.
For almost all of it. I'm sure there's some good ones in there.
Sure.
But we don't even use the word sales because that alone implies explicit or implied manipulation. And ours is all about helping someone at every turn, but doing so in a way that could help you too.
It's got to be really authentic. So the link to get to that will be in the show notes for anybody that's interested in that Grow Big training. So do you mind giving us a heads up on those 5 lies that we tell ourselves?
I would love to.
Great.
Dan, as an author, I know there's probably some other authors on the listening. I'll have like 1,000 hours in on writing this book by the time it goes to market on August 27th. So whenever you ask, would you mind sharing something about the book? My answer will be yes.
It is locked and loaded, baby.
The opening, by the way, the opening of the book is like big, huge font. It says, I wake up every morning, then you turn the page, looking to help my friends succeed, and you turn the page, and some just happen to be clients.
Oh, I dig that.
I wake up every morning looking to help my friends succeed, and some happen to be clients. I just think that's fun. Okay, the 5 lies. Let me give you some background because this actually ended up on the cutting room floor in the manuscript. So it's sort of fun to share this with people. So we were about, I would say, 60% through the writing of the manuscript, and my publisher, who just publishes 1 book a year, So he works with you like he chooses the author as much as the author chooses him, and he's working with me very deeply on this. We're on a call. We're really figuring out the manuscript and what needs to go near the beginning of the book, but not the very beginning. And Todd says, he's the publisher. He says, Mo, what do people have in their head that get in the way of implementing all your great training? And Dan, I didn't know. I didn't know the answer because we don't get people 2 years later emailing us about something got in the way.
Right.
We get them emailing about, hey, I brought in a $10 million project, or I just got promoted to equity partner, or I just got this big lead. Like, so we get all these, it worked messages,
Right.
but we don't really get emails about it didn't work.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we're like, wow, that's new content. That's got to be in the book. So what we did was in hundreds of workshops, I and the whole team, there's about 15 or 20 facilitators and coaches besides me. So in every workshop for about 6 months, we ask anybody who's in the workshop, think of a time when you wanted to reach out to somebody, but you didn't, or you hesitated.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got it. Yep, got it. And then we'd say, put in Zoom or Teams or write it on a flip chart if it's in person. Tell us exactly what was in your mind that caused you to hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
And we took all those verbatims, put them in a big database, synthesized them. And we didn't know if there would be 13 lies that get in the way of people's success, or 3 or 2 big ones or whatever. Turns out there's 5. And I can give these to you now.
Great.
So the first one, I can't do that. I can't do that hits people like a freight train at the beginning of their career. I can't meet with the CEO. I can't talk about that offering with our clients. I can't bring in the big deals. I can't, whatever. And it's generally bigger in the beginning and more narrow at the end. So if somebody's 60 years old, they might say something like, I can't talk about that new service offering.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the beginning, it's more like, I can't do the whole thing.
Yeah.
The solve for that one is to have more of a growth mindset. Researcher Carol Dweck, maybe the biggest expert on growth mindset in the world.
Great book.
She has this little hack. All of them are so good. All of her content's so good. She has a great hack where she says, if you ever find yourself saying, I can't do something, put the word yet on the end of it.
Yeah. I say that to my clients all the time. Yeah.
Do you? There you go.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference, don't you think?
Tremendous difference. But you've knocked the ceiling down.
Yeah. Right. Oh, I like that. Knock the ceiling down. Dan, that might go in the database.
Put that in the database, Mo.
Courtesy of Dan Kent. I just wrote it down. I love it.
All right.
Yeah. And so that's a big one. And, all the research shows that any complex skill is both learned and earned. So that's the Erickson research that he's the 10,000 hour rule guy.
Yeah.
Deliberate practice. We can learn anything. We can get better at anything. We may not, if I love basketball, it doesn't mean I can make it to the NBA, but if I'm mentored by an expert, if I I can get better.
Yeah.
And that's the idea. Yep. So that's lie number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Lie number 2, I don't know what to do. This is a good one. So
probably pretty common.
Oh, really common. So let me give you some exact verbatims because I've got them right here. I don't know what to do. Some of the exact verbatims that we heard were, I don't have anything meaningful or new to share. I don't have an excuse to reach out. I need to wait till X happens. I'm not sure what they need. I might be bothering them. I don't know what their priorities are. Like, we can run those tapes all day long.
You bet.
Well, I know I need to reach out, Dan, but I don't know what to do. So the hack there is, and this is ridiculously simple, ask them what they want.
Yeah.
What are your priorities, CEO? Maybe I can find some ways to be helpful. What are your priorities, client? I get a lot of interesting things across my desk. If you'll tell me what you're thinking, what are your big priorities are the next year, I'll know what to send you, or
Right.
what webinars to invite you to, or whatever. Like, there's always a move to make. There's always a chance to be helpful, but it sure helps to know how to help.
Yeah. Yeah. And the best way, if you have a question or you have a blind spot, best way to solve for X is to ask, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is easy to weave into just everyday conversations. There's some research out of Cornell. Dr. Vanessa Bonds has found that you have a 34 times chance of getting a yes to something if you ask in person than over email.
34
34x.
times.
It's hard to even get your mind around, but it's the difference in her study between a 2 out of 100 chance of a success and a 68 out of 100 chance of success.
Wow.
34 times. So what we want to do around that second lie is not knowing what to do is while we're interacting with the person in other ways, what you're already hired to do, the project you're already working on with your colleague or whatever, just weave in a little question that says, gosh, Jane, it's really been fun working with you on this project. We're getting ready to get the board packets out, slam till Tuesday, but it'd be fun to go to dinner and just hear about your priorities for the next year sometime after this slows down. That'd be really that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So just that takes 30 seconds to get out. You'll get a yes every time. And now your future self's happy because you got that dinner locked in 3 weeks from now or whatever it is.
What's crazy is, conventional wisdom is going to tell, our instinctual wisdom even will tell us, your chances are better if the ask is face to face. One of the things that I just love and so respect about your work is you're always supporting this with data and analytics that actually punctuate what we might intuitively know, but to think that it's a 34x difference, that's just staggering.
Yeah. And once you get that number in your head, you're like, man, I got superpowers when I'm in person. I need to be a little planful about it.
Yeah.
As opposed to your point of the vague idea of, oh yeah, in person's better.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't have thought it's 34 times better.
I wouldn't have either.
So I'm much more intentional about not letting the end of that breakfast slip away without suggesting a next step or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Love that one. All right. What's 3?
Ready? Third lie. Here we go. And you'll notice how now that we're to the third one, we can see a trend. You'll notice how each of these are in specific order. You got to get to the first 2 to get to 3, the first 3 to get to 4, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. So the third one is, at this point, we know we can do it and we know what to do. So the third lie is, I might do it wrong. That's what hit me really hard when I had to call that chief human resource officer.
Right. That was your line, wasn't it?
Oh, I was so petrified.
Yeah.
I wrote that script and rewrote. I can never remember doing that before that, but I was so afraid she would be angry at me. And I really, truly looked up to her and liked her. I wanted to please her. I was so thrilled that we were chosen for that huge project. So some of the other verbatims that are in this realm that we heard in our workshops, I don't want to ask dumb questions. I don't know the content well enough to talk about it. I had all these.
Yeah.
I didn't know what these 4 people were even talking about.
Yeah.
I'm out of touch with the rest of the team. I might say something wrong. That one I was okay on in that moment, but could come up. I'm afraid I don't know the answers to the question they might ask. I felt that one. I'm not important enough to meet with them. I think if I'm honest, I was feeling that big time. She was 25 years older than me. She knew everything I was going to talk about. I had 30 seconds more of what I could explain about it. But after that, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So that's a big one where that fear of doing something wrong and especially harming the relationship can really get in our way.
Yeah.
But the hack on this one, I'll go back to you because I'm sure you cover all the stuff in your coaching too, is, if we're always acting from true intent and with authentically trying to be helpful, we can take that one and just blow it up.
Yeah.
Because you can hear it in somebody's voice. And that was something that was really natural for me in that moment of the story I shared before, was that I really truly was, I thought these all 4 things, I really did think they were a great value. Mm-hmm. I didn't know if they would make sense for her priority wise, but as I described them, as I look back now, 30 years later, there's no doubt it came across as authentic because they really were great, like 2 or more times the value of what she was paying.
Right.
And so I did feel good about that, but I was just running all these tapes in my mind. I thought she was going to reach through the phone and punch me in the face.
Right. And that I might do it wrong. Like you said, when you got into some of the specifics there of like, I don't know enough about the subject matter to talk about it. How does somebody approach that if that's actually true?
2 ways. One is to do a lot more studying, but the other would be bring somebody alongside you that knows it really well. Outsource it.
Great.
Yeah. So a lot of times the other, we talked about authenticity and truly coming from a place of being helpful as being one way to topple over that lie. The other way of toppling over in that lie is ask for help, but internally, typically.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for somebody to educate you on the topic. But that means you got to carry their water, or just invite them to come along and make the introduction. Get out of the way. Be the resource that's the kind of person that's bringing awesome people to clients.
Right.
That works too.
You're matchmaking as much as you're on the enrolling of them as a client.
You got it.
Yeah.
And so many of our clients, because they're not all, but a lot of them are high-end experts, they can come to the conclusion that they have to know everything.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody expects that. Nobody. We just got to get past that.
Yeah. Man, I'm seeing a theme here with these 3 so far. We'll unpack that in a minute here. I'm curious. All right. What's 4?
Fourth lie. It's a big one. I'm too busy. Yeah. I'm slammed. These were exact verbatims. I'm slammed with work now. I couldn't do anything with them now, even if they hired me. We don't have the capacity. This stuff takes too long and I don't have time. I already hit my goals this year, so why try? This is the last thing on my list, never seems to get done. All these kind of, there's a lot more in the book, but all these kind of ideas that make sense in the next day or so, but harm our long-term future self.
Yeah.
That's what this one's about. And it's about how do you the way to topple this one over is to realize that you have special abilities when you're really busy. You have access. You have that 34 times superpower. So ask for things now, or suggest or offer ways to be helpful now, that even if you can't do it now, you set it up for 3 months from now when the things slow down. You have insights, like you have the coolest stuff to share. And the third thing about being busy is you're in demand. I mean, I'm convinced, Dan, that the psychological principle of scarcity, we want less of what there is more of.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of research behind that. The audience can fire up Wikipedia and just put scarcity mental heuristic and they'll get a litany of research. But basically, we want more of what there is less of. Well, the number one thing that we're all judging each other on, whether it's right or wrong, is scarcity of time.
Right.
So if an expert or a leader is super busy, it's implied, or their schedule's full, in other words, it's implied that they're really, really good.
Yeah.
So the busier we are, the more people want our time, and the more we need to lean into it, because a little bit will go a long way. A little 30-second text that says, hey, slammed right now, if I'm a lawyer, slammed right now, headed for trial. It looks like this thing's going to settle in the next month or so. Would love to get together 2 months from now and share, because I'm learning a lot that could help your organization. Well, because we're busy, a little text like that, we've earned the right to send something short, not a big 1,000-word email. And the other side will go, feel really great. We reached out and say, yeah, let's set it up. Can't wait to learn. Right.
Yeah.
So little bits go a long way to sustain our momentum if we do it when we're busy instead of waiting till we're done.
Agreed. And a little sidebar here. I saw some, I forget where it was, something from you talking about that, almost bifurcating the kind of work that you're doing into chunks. So if you've got an hour and you can send off 15 quick 50-word, I think is your limit, right? Because that's what fits on an Outlook mobile screen. Quick 50-word email outreach of some kind. Those don't take long to put together. So in terms of the bang for the buck, if you can send off 5, 10, 15 of those in 1 hour, you've got a tremendous step forward in the next conversation when you do actually have time.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. That's exactly right. And we can even, I know we're in the middle of the lies now or near the end, but we could even share, like, because you've seen that video, we could share like the perfect structure of the 50-word email if you want. Like, that's a really, people love that concept, and we could tell these are the, So we'll put a pin in that.
Let's come back to that. So keep listening, y'all. We're coming back to that one. Okay.
So lie number 5, Dan, it's the biggest one, and it's sneaky. It's the sneakiest of the lies. And it's, I'm going to look bad. I'm going to look bad. And this one is about the fear of rejection underneath there. I'm going to look bad is on the surface. Fear of rejection's underneath it. And these are things like, I don't want to be a pest. I don't want to come across as salesy.
Yeah.
I can't ask my friends for business. I'm worried they might not remember me. I'm intimidated by them. They already use someone else. They're already spending a lot with us. These are that, I was feeling a whole lot of this when I made that call too.
Yeah.
I mean, there was multiple lies hitting me at once.
Sure. As
in
usually
that
the
one.
case.
Yeah. Yeah. And the solve for this one is back to, I mean, we already sort of covered coming from a place of helpfulness, but it's just acting from a place of pure intent. But just do it. Send a dang email. Make the offer to attend the webinar. Disconnect ourselves from the outcome of whether they attend or not. We don't know if it's in their priority right now.
Right.
But we win when we make the offer to be helpful. We win when we hit send on the email. We win when we attempt to be helpful. We certainly don't win when we never make the offer. And it's just, I'm convinced that the top performers they get themselves out of the way, especially this last lie, and they just make more offers of helpfulness.
Yeah, man, all of those have this common theme to them that you're referring to them as lies. I would probably, in my conversation with a client, talk to them as the stories that they're making up to tell themselves, right? We can't handle cognitive dissonance. And so if the future is unknown, we're going to have to make a forward projection story about how that's going to turn out to protect ourselves, to close that gap of cognitive dissonance or the unknown. And so we make up a story. Well, our default mechanism is going to be one of those lies most frequently. Because that's the safest, right. Isn't it?
Yeah. It's actually safer to not do anything and convince ourselves I'm too busy or whatever the lie of roll the dice, whatever lie pops up.
Right. Now, safety is not what our listeners are looking for. So pay attention to this, because just because it's safer doesn't mean it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that.
Yes. Well, especially if we tie that back from the beginning, like leadership in a way, I know this isn't the normal definition, but in a way, great leaders are ones that are inspiring and creating positive change in the world. And that, by definition, means you're doing something new, that you're not being comfortable, that you're not being safe.
Right.
So getting these lies out of the way is half the battle.
Absolutely. Change is inherently risky. I mean, by definition, yeah. And to inspire. Say more about that.
Oh, well, I think in common air quotes sales training, a lot of people, and this is old school, I feel like this is like 1970s and 80s. So like this isn't what we believe, but to give you the idea, I think a lot of people really focus on pain. Like, you got to find the area of pain. You can even hear my voice. I'm making fun of it. You gotta make them realize the pain they're in.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to solve the problem. Well, sometimes you get hired to remove pain, for sure. There's some things that make sense. But I think a lot of times we're hired as experts to create a next level of performance, something quite positive. Like, things are good now, but they could get better. And I think inspiration is threads through all of that. Whether somebody needs your help to remove something that's a negative, or somebody needs your help to enhance something that's a positive, either way, the thread is there's got to be some inspiration there to realize that we can do it.
Yeah.
There's a table in Give to Grow, Dan, that makes sense here, which is we realized, we divided this we created this 2-column matrix, doing the work and winning the work. You could also call it like executing on what you've already got on your plate, or the company does, executing on what's been decided, versus winning the work. That would be like doing the work. Winning the work would be like inspiring positive change.
Right.
And what we realized is the moves that work in each of those aren't just different, they're complete opposites. So like, when you reach out to somebody, if it's around doing the work, they're always going to respond. If it's around winning the work, they're rarely going to respond.
Right. That's true, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. When you're doing the work that's already been decided on, it makes sense to go in with all the recommendations and the data and everything, like a full presentation. When you're winning the work, it's better to go in with a blank page and start co-creating what the future could look like.
Right.
Completely different. When doing the work, answers are good. What are going to be what wins. But when you're inspiring change, when you're winning the work, questions are going to help the most.
Curiosity, right.
You nailed it. So in any way, all those in the end, the doing the work is all around certainty. If we had to do one word, we're going to get this done. And the winning work is all around possibility, inspiration. And that's what I was trying to tie back to.
I've been so excited to have this conversation with you because of the very conspicuous, from where I sit anyway, overlap between relationship-based business development and leading an organization. And it's funny, in my notes to talk with you, I'm glad you brought it up. You look like the smart one here, for sure. I wanted to point out that overlap between the two in relationship-based business development and leading a team, where one, just as you described, one comes with curiosity, questions, possibility, inspiration, potential, blue sky, all of that. But when it comes time to deliver, you damn well better have your ducks in a row. You'd better have that confidence. You'd better be prepared.
You nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. It filters through every facet of the business all the way through.
It totally does. And the problem that happens to most people is they start the business as an entrepreneur, or they start the profession and learn the trade and all that. Whatever it is, we get really good at the doing the work stuff, or the delivering on the decisions that have already been made.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unfortunately, nobody ever tells you this, but then we port over those moves to the winning of the work, or the creating the possibility, or helping shape the decisions that haven't been made, if we broaden it to leadership. And nobody tells you the moves are different, or that you should do the exact opposite to make it happen.
Right.
So what happens? Well, since I've learned that in the doing the work that, a 72-page PowerPoint is the way that you get the decision made, or you brief the senior leadership team on the results for what you were hired to do, whatever, then all of a sudden we think that taking a 72-page PowerPoint to a breakfast to somebody who might be a client is a good move. Well, it worked over here, so I should do it over there, except that you come across as a weirdo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a natural instinct. You want to replicate what got you that other gig, or how you were effective in delivering on what you promised. It makes some sort of intuitive sense. But
it totally does.
But clearly, I love the way that you've so distinctly differentiated. I mean, it's complete binary in how it actually shakes out. Curiosity versus a certainty.
It totally is. And that's what we've tried to weave through Give to Grow, or, our Grow Big training for the full 3 days, the comprehensive transformative process, is that, so then what you've got to do is sort of delete the things that got you here. It's sort of a what's got you here won't get you there thing. When it comes to winning the work, or creating the positive change in the workplace on the team that you're working on, you almost have to delete in your mind all the things that you've learned to get where you're at, and then insert all these new moves. And these are the kinds of things we're talking about here. Like, you have to learn, how do you ask really great questions that light up the pleasure center of the other person, that get them really engaged? How do you prepare for a meeting and go in with a blank page, with an open mind? Because that takes a different, you still have to prepare, but a very different kind of preparation, things like that.
Yeah. How much of your work is with clients is on that second part, on the deliverable? And I ask this because I can think of, if I look at my book of clients over the past, say, 10 years, I wouldn't say it's equally divided at all, but I definitely have plenty of business owners or entrepreneurs who are very entrepreneurial, and they're all about questions. They're all about bright, shiny objects, and they so distractible. And others who are so averse to change that once they get the certainty in their head, I'm dragging them kicking and screaming back to the curiosity stage. It's like we almost have to wear both those hats and be some form of schizophrenic as a leader, because we have to vacillate between, I call it zooming in, zooming out with my clients. Seeing the big picture and the little picture, seeing the questions and the curiosity, and the certainty and the preparation and the deliverable. How often do you work with clients on that second half?
Yeah, a lot. So there's your intuition spot on. There's some research by a researcher named Dr. Victor Ottati, and he validated a mental heuristic, mental shortcut in the brain. And when you validate one, you get to name it. So hopefully you choose
Nice.
well. And I liked his. He named this heuristic earned dogmatism. And what earned dogmatism, now there's an emerging body of research around this. He was the first. And basically what it says is that the more expert we become in an area, specifically the more expert we believe our depth of our expertise is, the deeper expertise, basically, the more closed-minded we become about that domain. So to your point, we've got to really fight to keep our curiosity.
Yeah.
So the more we're in an organization, the more we jump to conclusions around what should be done too quickly.
Yeah.
And the more we've got to fight to keep asking those questions. So I like your zooming in and zooming out, where on one hand, the skills we've learned are massively valuable. And on the other hand, we have to keep questioning them.
Yeah. I think
It's sort of crazy.
it is. Terrific thought leader in that space is Adam Grant. I mean, aptly titled book, Think Again. He's constantly advocating for always reexamining your assumptions and getting out of your comfort zone and finding new ways of looking at things. And again, just because it's what got you here doesn't mean it's what's going to get you there. Every circumstance, every situation, every engagement's going to be unique. I mean, up to a point. We want some common threads, of course, in our discipline, but yeah, he's a terrific resource for anybody that kind of needs to sharpen up the blade on their own curiosity, and doing it from a place like, I think a lot of people get resistant to that because it positions them as vulnerable or, asking questions. I think it's pounded into us. If you're asking questions, it's because you don't know, and that's a bad thing. And all of that's probably true, except for it's a bad thing, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And one little framework we've used that with all our clients that really can help them get over this idea is to know where the line is between what you should know and what they should know. So let's say we're a change management consultant, because everybody could understand what that is. Mm-hmm. Or let's say we're a financial advisor, because a lot of the audience might have used financial advisors. Well, a financial advisor should definitely know proper asset allocation, the efficient frontier. How do you have quarterly calls to look at how things have drifted off of your asset allocation you want, and be able to analyze that and all that kind of stuff. Well, those are all things that financial advisors should know. And they should retain their expertise. They know how to do that. Here's the right mix of stocks, bonds, cash, and maybe alternatives if you have enough net worth, all that kind of stuff. They should know that like nobody's business. But if they didn't ask any questions of the client about what are your goals?
Yeah.
How would you, let's say you have what's your risk tolerance?
Yeah.
How might you want to transfer this wealth to the next generation and the generation after that? How do you want to engage them in learning these skills that you've learned, client, now that you're older and your kids and grandkids are younger? Like, what timeline would you like to talk, and at what intervals in communication flows as we analyze this? Mm-hmm. Here's our recommendation that we meet quarterly, face-to-face once a year, on Zoom the other 3 times a year, whatever. But like, the client should know tons of stuff that you don't know, and we should retain our expertise for the pieces we know, but we should ask them what they want or what would work best in all the other areas. And it's the meshing of those two that makes a great possibility, like we've talked about, creating new possibility. And it's the advisors, the professionals that like don't ask those questions and assume they know all the answers. That's just bad news. Everybody wants the process to be tailored for them. Even if you have a standard process, we want it to be tailored for our unique needs. Even if it's not being tailored that much, we want to feel like it is.
Right.
So, it's engaging in those questions that let you create the perfect solution all the time.
What a terrific bit of wisdom there. I can give a practical application of that in coaching and consulting, what I do. So I have a whole breadth of different industries and demographics and clients that I serve. And one of the first questions inevitably that they ask is, what do you know about the landscaping business? And, I've had a few landscaping clients over the years. Sure. Am I a landscaping business owner? Do I know all of the industry and have institutional knowledge that no, I don't. I don't know the industry as well as you do. Do you know what I do know? Business coaching, business fundamentals. I'm an expert in that, and I will bring to bear that experience. You come to the table with your expertise and your experience and your institutional knowledge, and we come to the table with what I can bring as far as best practices go, and your blind spots and my experience in seeing other businesses and the fundamentals surrounding that. We put both those heads together. There's a synergy. It's a 1 + 1 = 3 all day.
I love it.
I don't have to know the landscaping industry the way that they do. In
No.
fact, I
And it's
probably
almost
shouldn't
better.
be exactly.
It's better. Yeah, it's better because you're going to bring ideas from a high-level banker or internet marketing expert, or like you're going to bring all kinds of new ideas to them the more broad your clientele is. And if you
Exactly.
only had one industry, pick whatever it is, like it's going to get almost too narrow.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean intimately. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go back. Unless you want to go somewhere else, let's go back to in that number 3. I think it was. I'm too busy. Is that what you were gonna? What were we gonna expound on? Oh God.
Oh, the email, the 50-word email.
50-word email. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you mind going back to that?
Yeah. Well, I do, because like a lot of times the feedback we'll get in our workshops is, gosh, it gave me ideas I can use forever. That's more high levels. We'll zoom out and we can zoom in on a very specific move or tactic. And that's more practical stuff. People love the idea of, hey, I can put that in practice right away.
Yeah.
When it comes to deepening relationships, my friend Marissa King, she's a researcher at Penn. She told me of this study. I can't remember the exact researcher, but anyway, or the name of it. But she said between 50 and 80% of the feeling of connectedness between two people wanes after about 3 months. 50 to 80% is gone. So it was a particular study, if I remember right, of sisters. So it was specifically like kin or family members.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not perfect, but it's the best I've ever seen that shows the half-life to feeling connected.
Okay.
So, if we think about, let's say it's just in that range, 50 to 80%, you and I have this great interview. We're really bonding right now. Like when you interview somebody and you have this really meaningful conversation, you bond. But let's say if neither you nor I do anything to keep in touch for 3 months, we're not thinking about each other at all. And if Sean, our mutual friend, if he says, hey, I saw you're in that thing with Dan, how's he doing? I'm like, oh man, we really connected when we recorded the episode, but I haven't talked to him. I'm not really sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the half-life of feeling connected drops like a rock. So what that means is we got to have interviews and dinners together, and somebody who likes to play golf, or they go gardening or whatever they do. But we can't do that all the time because these take a lot of time, the really deep things.
You bet.
Going to the ball game, so to speak, going to dinner. So what we need is little pings that keep our relationship alive.
Yeah.
It's avoiding the idea of out of sight, out of mind. Just a little email that says, Dan, I was thinking about you, thought you might like this piece. It relates back to
saw this article, heard this podcast.
Saw this article. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you do that? Well, the old way of thinking, and I'm going back before the iPhone, was that you wanted to keep emails to one screen on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of made sense. That's when people were reading emails on their computer.
Right.
But we're not. We're triaging, or a lot of times reading the full email on our phone. Well, in quick little tests we did, that's about an Outlook or any kind of
email client
on a phone. It's about 50 words.
Okay.
So how can you keep things to 50 words on a phone? There's 4 big steps. One is compelling subject line. So the subject line is telling the person, should they open it or not? So usually that means instilling a little bit of curiosity. Interesting podcast, I think you'll like. You may not give the whole answer in the subject line, but the subject line's just open me or not open me. Yeah. So curiosity is usually going to get it open. Second thing, I'm a big fan of not saying, hope you're well. Because the reason is, one, it's a throwaway line and a lot of people use it. But the other reason is, at least in Outlook on a phone, the default setup is that you can peek inside the email a little bit. You see the first line or two?
Right.
So if you say, hope you're well, you just ruin that really good real estate. Yeah. So the second thing is, instead of doing that, first sentence should show the value. Subject line says open me. That's number 1. Number 2, show the value in the first sentence. I think you'll really like this podcast by Adam Grant because he really covered, how to think, how to keep your mind open or whatever.
Yeah.
The third thing is, this one's optional, is do their homework for them. So that would be something like, if you're really short on time, Dan, skip right to the 13-minute and 40-second timestamp, because that's when Adam really gets into how to keep your mind open, even when in your deep expertise.
Yeah.
That's the third thing. Don't have to do it, but you could. And then the fourth thing that makes emails work is the good news about short emails is they're short and they'll get read. The bad news is it could look like you copied and pasted and sent it to 50 people.
Yeah.
So something has got to be in there that it's clear that you sent it only to that person.
Right.
So a little half sentence like, I think you'll like that about 5-minute segment, Dan, because it relates directly to what we talked about on the podcast when we recorded, 3 months ago or whatever.
Right.
So curious subject line, get to the point in the first sentence, do their homework for them if that makes sense, and have something in there that says clearly to them, this wasn't copied. It could not have been copied and pasted and sent to 50 people, because there's something in there that was just for them.
Specific.
And if you do that over and over, you get a little relationship point, when you send that. Even if the person never replies, they're feeling cared for.
Yeah.
They feel it. Yeah. You get it.
As I'm listening to you describe these all make intuitive sense. I can think of the solicitation emails, if you will, for lack of a better term, that I actually respond to, that I will actually open or read and won't immediately swipe left to archive, which is probably 90% of all the emails that I get. Intuitively, it makes sense, but counterintuitively, conventional wisdom-wise, that is, one thing is conspicuously absent from what you just talked about: call to action.
Oh, yeah, that could make total sense. In my example, it was just purely a relationship builder. But if you wanted to set up that dinner, or if you wanted to, I would say, if that makes sense, always it's the last thing before your name. And there's nothing in the way from the question, hey, I'm coming to Dallas, in a couple months, would love to get together.
Okay.
How's that sound?
So it's not precluded from being in there. Just make sure that the other elements are always there, because that's cultivating a genuine, authentic relationship building moment.
Yeah, your question is a really good one, because a lot of times the email is to set up a dinner or set up the meeting when you come to their town or get their reaction to something. If that's the case, definitely include it, and definitely make it the last thing before your name. So I think when they're buried in the middle, it's not as powerful.
Gotcha.
So these are like pro ninja tips. The other pro ninja tip that's optional would be to use a PS.
Okay.
Everybody reads a PS. So I think sometimes, I know it's almost like you read it first. Sometimes you're like, oh, there's a PS. So I think that's, you can use that for different methods. I think using it to show some commonality sometimes is a real powerful way. Like, hey, I'm a big St. Louis Cardinals fan. If I know somebody else is, I'm like, man, tough year. I hope they do a fire sale at the deadline. What do you think? Like, so
right.
I usually don't use, I usually use that just more for just commonality stuff. But it's a fun, PSs are fun. Make them fun, I think is a neat way to look at it.
What a great ground rule for that, because they should be. It's not in the body. It's emphasizing the relatability and punctuating or deepening the relationship, perhaps, and the personal nature of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so relative to that call to action, do you have any hard, fast rules about that? Because people are very opinionated about the whole CTA. Do you have any strong feelings about it? Some say if you don't have a CTA in there, like, what are you even doing? What's the point?
Mm-hmm. I think that's the mindset, though, of the salesperson, like in the bad definition. Like, here's the thing, is that when we have a relationship-based approach, somebody might come in and out of being able to purchase things from you. I think especially of these big professionals that we guide, management consultants, lawyers, accountants, engineers, but they're people that, if we use that mantra, a great deal might make your year, but a great relationship can make your career.
Yeah.
If that's true, I believe it is, for a whole lot of people, then a whole lot of the outreaches should not be about something commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll paint an ugly picture. If somebody emailed me and every single time there was some call to action about I should purchase something from them, I'm going to quit listening, because I'm going to hear what I'm really hearing is, oh, all you care about from me is a pocketbook,
Right.
a wallet, a budgetary line item.
Right.
But if 9 out of 10 times I get something that's truly value add, that's reflecting something we talked about, that's helpful, then the 1 out of 10 times I get something that I could purchase something from them, I'm more likely to do it. So I think it depends on the mindset. If somebody's only out there to sell, yeah, have a CTA every single time. But that's not the world I live in.
Yeah. Nor is it the one I want to live in. I mean, especially the way I can only speak to the Snowball System because that's the only book I've had a chance to read yet. But that's part of what resonated so much with me is that emphasis on the relationship. If an opportunity comes up, and it is a big if, you might not ever do any business with them directly. They may never buy something from you, but they, one, by mere virtue of the relationship, if it's actually worth its effort, it's a relationship that's worth its effort, period, full stop. On the other hand, even if they don't buy something from you, maybe they introduce you to somebody that will. Maybe they send you another resource. There is a reciprocal nature to that. And, you don't want to position it as transactional, but life does kind of work that way, if you're a valuable connection for me because I like the content that you share, you thought of me about the St. Louis Cards, like I'm going to want to continue to stay connected with you just by mere virtue of how dynamic and lovely that relationship is. And at some point, I or you will think of the other person and go, you know what? I need to introduce you to Mo. He actually is great at this thing and you should check out what he does. It's going to come up organically. Yep. We don't need to push that call to action on every single. I'm kind of delighted that was your response. I sort of figured it probably it was in that neighborhood, but I'm delighted that you're on the record for it. As it were.
Yeah, I honestly think most of the common wisdom out there, I just don't that might work in the short term, but doesn't work in the long term. Like,
well put.
And it's the relationship is the folks who invest in relationships from a truly helpful way. Now, you need to do so in a way that in general is going to statistically come back and have commercial success for yourself too, without a doubt. But there's a way to do that. Like as an example, you mentioned before, you did in the intro, briefly mentioned that you read our Grow Big Playbook, which is our monthly newsletter.
Yeah.
GrowBigPlaybook.com is where people can sign up for it. I love it. Like you've seen, we never sell on that. Like it's all value add. Here's new content we're writing. Here's the podcast we've interviewed. Now, I might mention that we have a new book coming out,
sure, but
it's all about adding value. And if we do that, the list is going to grow. You build trust in that group of people and things like that. So that's why if we have a CTA in the Grow Big Playbook, it's not to sell something. It's rather to get people to think differently. So a lot of times, if you've seen, I'll end it with a question like, what are you doing to set your big priorities? Or what are you doing to overcome the enemy of I'm too busy, air quotes around that. So we'll have a CTA in a way, but it's more around getting people to do things that'll help their future self, not a CTA like you should give us your money.
Right. It's centered around being helpful.
Yep.
The point of that newsletter ultimately culminated in this compelling question that should be challenging and thought-provoking and counterintuitively. Look, if I trust the content you're putting out there, I trust you. I'm actually almost through that law of scarcity. I'm more apt to go, you know what? He didn't even mention in here how to get more. I'm going to go and I'm going to look up how to get more almost because you didn't try and sell me in that newsletter because that wasn't what I signed up for. I didn't sign up to be sold to, every month or every week or however often that newsletter comes out. I signed up to keep the relationship going and get these little nuggets. And if I want more, dude, I know where to go. You don't need to CTA me. I know where to go.
Yeah.
The internet's my friend.
Many people, and too many people like feel the pressure to close a deal right away, whether it's on email or in person or whatever. Like, no, find a way to be helpful, find a next step and recommend it for sure. Like there should be something escalating their side. There should be something escalating on our side, but it doesn't have to be a sale every time.
Yeah.
And like as an example, one of the things we decided to do with Give to Grow is with Snowball System, a lot of people really loved. We have a training that accompanied the book. I'm sure you saw it. There's like 24 worksheets. Like it's a whole system in a book. But you sort of had to have the book to to understand it, because the worksheets wouldn't make sense without it, without the book itself.
Yeah,
But that
so
was
a lot
awesome.
of-
Like, it was
a
a
lot of
huge,
context.
huge value add.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge value add. And that's with Snowball System. With the new book, Give to Grow, we actually just finished a training where you don't even need the book to go through the training.
Wow.
It's better if you have the
I was
book,
just
but you
gonna
don't
say,
have to
but
have it.
if the training's that good, I'm gonna go get the dang book.
Yeah, exactly. So like, one of the things I need to say on this podcast, or my marketing people whack me over the head, is givetogrowinfo is where people can go and get the free training.
Oh, fantastic.
And it's 6 videos, it's worksheets, it's downloads, and you don't even have to buy the book Give to Grow. But if you go to givetogrowinfo, you can get the free training, and it's fantastic. I just reviewed it this morning. It's fantastic.
That's
So
great.
give is the theme.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll punctuate that. Look, when I discovered you, as we talked about at the top of the call, it was through our mutual friend, Sean Blanc, who episode aired 1 or 2 before yours. So go check that out when you're all done, if you haven't heard it already. But I discovered you, looked into you a little bit. Sean was a fan. Okay, I'm going to see why he's such a fan, looking into Mo Bunnell's work, and ultimately signed up for the newsletter and took some of your kind of free, helpful content.
Yep.
Again, coming from a place of true generosity, I was like, this guy's giving this stuff away. This is terrific. Okay, we could stop there and say, all right, most content creators, a lot of consultants are doing that if we stop right there. But they get pitchy, they get salesy, they're ultimately almost predatory with that. It's become so transparent. Download the free PDF and you go do that and give me your email. And now I'm going to get sold to every week for this, 3-page PDF thing. And it's just gross. Yep. I ultimately, and I need to dig in a little bit more and unpack what in the heck did Mo do that made me escalate my curiosity from that freemium content that he was so generously providing. Then I went and bought the book. And look, I'll be honest, I've got 40 other books that I need to read that I'm just intensely curious about. But because I continued to see this stream of useful content from your newsletter, your book very quickly rose to the top of my list. And I read it because, again, it continued to provide consistent, useful value. And it didn't come with a condition that, all right, we're going to cut off the conversation until you click the call to action and actually buy the premium from the freemium.
Yep. Yeah. And I think a meta lesson from that I really, really believe is true is most people, when they hesitate about giving things away, they hesitate because there's a lie in their head. If we go back to the lies, that if they give it away, then the people won't engage with them later.
Yeah.
And I think it's the complete opposite. The enemy is not giving too much away. The enemy is obscurity. The enemy is not enough people knowing about you. And when you give things away, you can 1,000x, 10,000x, 100,000x the number of people who know about you. The same ratio of people is going to buy your stuff. But it's the fight against obscurity that's the issue. So that means, that says you take that free leveler, you have that giveaway, and you just give, you pull it as hard as you can. You give away, you have an hour, you give away your best stuff. If you have an email list with trainings, you give away your best stuff in the time that you've got. If you're giving a speech, you give away your best stuff. There's always another step to go to, but most people who hesitate are just thinking about it backwards. Like, it's not that if you give away your best stuff, people won't hire you. No, it's they'll tell other people about you.
Right.
And you'll get more clients.
Right. Just for the record, I wrote down that maxim, that little nugget there. The enemy is obscurity.
What was it?
The enemy is obscurity.
There you go. I need to write that down too.
Because that totally resonates with me, because it flies right in the face of what every marketer that's trying to market their marketing is giving to you.
So true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Wow. Okay. So you lead a team, give or take 20 people. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. 20, 25, 30, something like that.
Okay.
Yep.
In what ways do the vast skills that you developed over the decades of doing this, when it comes to business development, in what ways do those translate to the way that you lead your team? We sort of already touched on a little bit in terms of the curiosity and inspiration versus the confidence and certainty and deliverability.
Yep.
What other hacks, what other rules of thumb, what other value and takeaways could we give our audience relative to leading a team that is successful? Because if you weren't doing this right, man, you would have closed the doors a long time ago. So you must be leading your 20, 25, 30 people pretty well, Mo.
Well, I have done a lot of things wrong.
That's the first rule. Okay.
Yeah. And don't do those again when you do it.
Count on doing a lot wrong, but
I've had a lot of one-time mistakes that luckily were not a second-time mistake. I'll tell you one thing we've done in the last 6 months specifically, that I'm really happy we did, and we should have done it before, is I worked with the core team and developed a 2-pager that describes our business. And the whole team helped write this. And it is a game changer. So maybe I can describe this like in words and it'll make sense. There's a first page and a second page. On the first page, it has 4 boxes. And the way I describe this is the bottom box, they aren't equal. They aren't a 2x2. It's 3 that sit on top of one that's really horizontal. The horizontal one on the bottom goes across the page, and then 3 boxes are equally sized on top of it. The one on the bottom says solution. And what I'm trying to do with these 4 boxes is unlock limiting factors. I'm trying to widen the pipe. So in the solution box, I think a great solution is one that's immediately differentiable by others in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
So from the moment they meet you and you describe what you do, in 5 minutes, they should go, oh, that's different. So when I was describing how our approach is, it's business development training, there's lots of people who do that, but everybody else that does it, nearly everybody else, calls it sales training. Mm-hmm. And it's either implied and explicit around manipulation. Mm-hmm. And all of ours is relationship focused. So everybody wins at every turn. It's science-based, it's comprehensive. There's some other things, but once you cover that, everybody's like, oh, you're different. Yes, we are.
So traditionally that we might also refer to that as like a USP, unique selling proposition or differentiator. Okay. So pinning that down, being really clear on what that is.
Yep. That's the bottom of the first page. And then in the top of the first page in order, I put 3 boxes. Pre-BD, business development, pre-business development, which you could also call marketing, but marketing can have a bad taste in people's mouths because a lot of times it doesn't work. So I just renamed it pre-BD.
Love it.
And plus it rhymes. And then the second box is BD or business development. And the last box on the top is delivery. So here again, we're trying to unlock limiting factors. So the goal of pre-BD is to overwhelm the BD team. They should have more than they can handle. And if not, there's something to do there.
Great.
There's another pipe to widen. That could be advertising. It could be speaking at conferences. It could be asking for referrals. There's a million ways to generate leads. We've done a lot with digital content, largely due to our relationship with Sean and him teaching us how to do it. Mm-hmm. But it's like put massive amounts of free stuff out there, 600 podcast episodes, free courses, like all kinds of stuff that grow by word of mouth and then it generates trust like we've been talking about. Business development. In that box, the goal of it should be to overwhelm the delivery team. So we should have more than our people can handle. So we need to hire more people. So in the BD box, we've mapped out these are the questions we ask. These are the helpful offers we make. Like we can look at a checklist and say, would it be helpful if, that's the magical phrase we teach and love. Would it be helpful if we sent you our Winning More booklet, that workbook that shows how to scale a growth mindset across your whole firm? Yeah, I'd really like that. So we can sign them up for a little free training on that. Would it be helpful if, large organization, you sent a couple people through a public version of Grow Big training? Gosh, you'd waive the fees? Yeah, for you, we'd waive the fees. Send 3 people. Here's who they should be. Wow, we would love that. So we have like 8 would it be helpful ifs. So when we have a sales call, air quotes around that, it's not sales at all. We're just offering the next step for them.
Right.
And almost every one of those things is no charge.
Right.
Now, if they want to hire us, we talk about that too.
Of course.
But our go-to offers are going to be at no charge, gratis. And then the delivery bucket for us, that's a big, huge, heavy certification people go through to be able to teach the training and things like that.
Yeah.
And we just have we just had three more people graduate last week. That adds 3 more people to the team. So that's the first page, is like, it's all about unlocking limiting factors. Is how can we make this solution more better and more differentiatable? How can we use pre-BD to overwhelm the BD team? How can we add another tool or pull another lever around that? BD is all to overwhelm delivery, and delivery circles back to more pre-BD. If that
I
makes
love
sense.
that. That takes such a courageous leader to embrace that model, because seriously, so many people I work with, like, they actually have these limiting beliefs that are like, why would I grow at the scale that we're talking about, Dan? Do you know how much more work that's going to give me? They automatically sabotage the efforts because they have these limiting beliefs. They're scared to death that they're going to be overwhelmed by the amount of business they're going to cultivate.
Yeah. And the exact opposite's true, because the more resources you have, the more you and I we scheduled this interview today because starting a week from today, I'll be out for 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to Iceland with the family. Like, I literally will delete Outlook from my phone. So I will get no work emails.
Good for you, man.
I started doing that 3 years ago, and man, I would, the year before that, I would have thought we'll never be able to do that.
Yeah.
But we built up the team, we built up the systems, we kept hacking away at those boxes to give more support in the different areas. And 3 years ago, it actually worked great. And the team took a whole step up, because without me, the founder there, they sort of had to for 5 weeks. You can't, if the founder's gone for a week, you're like, hey, let's wait till next week and we'll ask Sue the question. Yeah. You're gone for 5 weeks. You got to figure it out.
You can't kick a can that many times.
Yeah. So the team did amazingly well. So we did it last year again, and then this year again. And I run so hard in the spring and fall. I used to hide this, like, we called it a sabbatical the first year, and last year I sort of hid, like didn't really promote. But man, I've worked really hard for a long time to have that luxury. The team is ready. That people have plenty of resources. They don't miss me at all, honestly.
Yeah.
But circle back to the point, is like, the people who think, oh, wow, why should I try to grow because it'll be more overwhelming? It's actually the complete opposite.
And
the more resources you have,
now you get to have more scrutiny to the kinds of clients that you actually accept.
Worst case.
That's not a bad place to be.
It's a great place to be. Say no to those. And the thing is, like, it's actually like 95% chance you're going to have you can hand clients off to other. You're going to have more work than you can handle if you build a team. If you can take off 5 weeks, you've actually built a team where the business can run on itself, and you're going to have more control, not less.
Yeah. I got to sharpen the pencil here, because I opened with this question for this little tangent we went off on. Tangent, maybe not. I talk about the responsibility of a leader to be inspiring and have a curiosity and be open-minded in that way, as opposed to kind of finding the other side of that coin. There's a certainty that needs to be in the deliverables. So, okay, there's a leader needs to be inspiring, and they have to have confidence and preparation when it comes to the delivery. 3 things that you just tipped the hat to, and you didn't explicitly say them, that's my job, is collaboration. You said when you build that little canvas, you involved your team in that.
Yes.
Right? So they were bought in. You collaborated with them. You asked them, you guys tell me what makes sense here. You're the ones doing the work. You're the boots on the ground. Help me build this canvas. So collaboration. We talked about courage. It takes courage to lean into those changes. It takes courage to overwhelm the next stage in that process, right? The pre-BD team, we're going to overwhelm the BD team. That's scary, right? And it takes courage to say, we're going to overwhelm our delivery team, or at least create the opportunity where they can then be overwhelmed, or choose or scrutinize what clients we're going to work with or not. So courage, and then trust.
Yeah.
That's obviously required of a great leader. You trust your people to go away for 5 full weeks and say, y'all know what to do. If something burns down, you've got my cell phone number, but otherwise, see you in 5 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And I think your 3 things are awesome. Like, on the collaboration, when we were building out that little 2-pager, they came up with way better ideas than I did.
Really?
Oh, way better. Like, one of the things on the second page is we wanted to have some kind of way of remembering why we get up in the morning. And one of the team members said, "Hey, how about that email that a client sent through a web form on our website?" Or they filled out a web form, not email. A couple months ago, her name was Julie, and she had gone through our training like 10 years before, filled out a web form, and basically sort of said, like, "I don't know if anybody reads this, but I hope so. I just wanted to let you know that when I went through your training years ago, I was at such and such law firm, and I really didn't think I wanted to become a lawyer to sell, and I was actually going to go in-house and leave, but I went through your program, loved it, and I haven't kept in touch, but I just want you to know I'm now at such a different law firm. By the way, it's quite a bit more prestigious, and I just got elected equity partner, and I'm co-leading one of our largest global practice areas, and it's because of the training we went through." And so we copied that and we put it on the back page of the thing of the,
Yeah.
what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And then we set a bunch of growth goals on how many people we want to train and things like that. And we said, every one of these people is a Julie.
Yeah.
So like, that's pretty cool. That's a cool idea.
That
So
is a reason to
she
get
doesn't
up
even know it. Yeah, she doesn't even know it, but like her little quote, part of her email or web form is in italics on the back of that 2-pager. And then for the major goals of training by 2030, we rolled it all up for cumulative to 2030. There's an arrow and it says every one of these people is a Julie.
That's fantastic. I love the way you articulated that. They're going to come to the table with better ideas than you will. Why do you think that is? I mean, you're running the show. Why do they have better ideas?
I think, well, one, it's a lot more people than one. So everybody could give their thoughts. So you just have a bigger body of brains working on it. But I also think they just see different things.
Mm-hmm.
They just see different things. And I think what I did was when we send that around, we got it to where it was a meaningful draft, call it 80% right, so to speak. And we sent it around and said, from every person, I want the number one thing you would keep and the number one thing you would change out of this. Mm-hmm. And I think when a leader asks for feedback, it's easy to say, "Hey, what do you think?" And then nobody gives anything meaningful because they're afraid to say it. But when you ask, what's one thing you would change and one thing you would keep, your number one thing in each, it sort of forces people to say things. And the things that the keeps were very different than what I would have expected. And the changes were like, we did every one of them. They were all good.
Yeah.
Every one of them was good.
That's great. I so appreciate your level of transparency about how it works at the Bunnell Idea Group. Look, my transparency here, that does a couple of things for me. One, it gives me, like you said, it gives me practical application of some of the nuance and what might feel more esoteric ideas that you present, but it gives very specific examples. And two, it's win-win because it emboldens my trust in you because you're peeling back the curtain going, we're eating our cooking here. Like we do it this way as well. And I know how effective the way you do it is. And so
thank you.
That level of transparency, again, just deepens the trust and gives me some really useful nuggets and tidbits that I can take away and actually implement right away.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'd mentioned a lot of mistakes. I wish I would have done this stuff earlier. I wish I would have.
We all.
I was telling myself lies. Like years ago, I would say, "Oh, I'm the only one that can train our stuff because I'm the only." Like I was so wrong. Like if you learned it, they can learn it. And I could be 5 or 10 years farther down the road had I gotten the lies out of my head earlier. And we were still successful, but like there was still resistance. Anyway, I think if these kind of, I guess my point with all that is that if these kind of things can help your listeners, fantastic. They can speed things up faster than I did.
Yeah. I'll highlight that lie that you said about, I'm the only one, the lie that you told yourself, I'm the only one that can train our people on this. A quote from Sean Blanc, actually, and I don't know if he got it from somewhere else. When you delegate, if they get it only 80% done, it's still 100% awesome. Right?
Yeah.
But they're still taking a tremendous amount off of your plate. And if you got to go in and maybe sharpen the edges or add a little personal touch or do a little extra something to make sure, proofread it, whatever that is, you've still handed off the vast bulk of all of that. And I would say at least as important, maybe even more so, you've empowered your people to feel like they make a difference. They're part of your team and that you trust them.
You got it. And to build on that, and I'm such a big fan of Sean, all of that was in the short term. Now do that 1,000 times a year.
Right.
Over 10 years, and now you're building up this team that's better and better and better all the time.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
You're not the only unicorn. You got a whole team of unicorns over a 10-year period.
Yep.
That's great. Mo, there's something about the way you're able to encapsulate the nuance of something that requires it. And it's one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to have you on the show today. In 140 characters or less, or a 30-second reel, we can't convey the kind of depth that's required. And somehow you seem to be able to do it in, maybe there's 6-minute YouTube videos or content, 3-minute, but man, you get right to the point and with such elegance. I'm so grateful to have had you and for you to share your experience and wisdom with our listeners, and very appreciative of the opportunity to talk with you today.
Man, that's awesome. I don't know why it is, but I just love this topic. And I just think the best, most interesting, and the people I admire the most in the world are folks who picked one thing and they just do that thing forever.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, those two, Betty White, Barbara Walters. Like, they think of like the people that Mike Krzyzewski, like the people who are like 70, 80, 90 years old, and they had this thing and they kept doing the same thing their whole life.
Yeah.
And they become world class at it. There's something about that archetype of a person that I really, really, really admire. And that's who I want to be. So I just feel like I'm on this journey. I love this topic. I don't want to do other topics. I want to have hobbies and things like that.
Sure.
But I just want to keep doing this one thing and honing the craft. And I hope, Dan, that let's make a date now. I hope in 20 years, you're still doing the podcast and I've got some new book coming out and I'll be on the show again. It'll be great.
I think we should do that. And with every iteration, it gets better. I can't wait to read Give to Grow as soon as that comes out. If it expounds upon and improves upon what you did with the Snowball System, man, we're in for a ride.
I think you're going to like it. And then, but you can sign up for givetogrow.info right now and get some free training on
That's true. That's link will be in the show notes. If you don't want to go look at the show notes, we'll say it again for the people in the back, givetogrow.info, to take advantage of some of Mo's terrific resources and all of the infinite wisdom that he can help you with in your business development efforts. And frankly, your leadership efforts, as we covered today. The overlap between those two is pretty compelling.
No doubt. Dan, thanks for having me on the show. I loved it. Loved every second.
Likewise. We at Best Self Coaching hope you got all that you came here for from today's episode. And if you want more like this, be sure to follow and subscribe to Clearing Obstacles on your favorite listening platform. You can also go to bestself.coach/podcast for more information. There you'll find more episodes and links to the content discussed today, as well as info on how you can get in touch if you're interested in clearing your own obstacles to become the kind of leader that you know your team is waiting for. Your business should serve your life, so let us help you get there from here, because nobody should do this on their own. Thanks again for listening. See you soon.